call this meeting of the Museum of the New Mexico Museum of Space History Commission meeting to order at 1:05 on Friday, March 12th. And our first order of business is to provide an introduction. So, Chris, why don't we start with you?
I am Chris Orwell. I am the Executive Director of the New Mexico Museum of Space History.
And Sharon, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sharon Masters. I'm the Executive Assistant to Chris Orwell.
And do we have any other personnel from the museum that are on with us?
Dave Dooling and Kathy Harper. Go ahead and introduce yourselves, Dave and Kathy.
Hey, hi, Dave Dooling, Education Director, New Mexico Museum of Space History.
Kathy Harper, Marketing Public Relations Director for the New Mexico Museum of Space History.
Very good. And Valerie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Valerie Joe, Assistant Attorney General, Counsel for the Commission.
And now for our commissioners.
Let me go ahead and do this by roll call. John, if you could introduce yourself.
I'm John Hawes, Commissioner.
And Carlos.
Got to find the mute button. Carlos Martinez, Commissioner.
James.
James McAteer, Commissioner.
Rhonda.
Rhonda Cross, Commissioner.
Beth.
Beth O'Leary, Commissioner.
Chris.
Chris Churchill, also Commissioner.
Paolo.
Paolo Amick, Commissioner.
Bryce.
Bryce Tappan, Commissioner.
And Kimberly.
Kimberly Fahey, Commissioner.
All right, Don, then we also
Very
have...
good. And I'm Don Elder, a commissioner from Portales. Do we have anybody else on with us?
Yes, we have DCA members. I'll let the secretary start.
Hi, members of the Commission. Secretary Garcia Griego from the New Mexico Department of Cultural Affairs.
Patrick.
Greetings, everyone. Patrick Moore, Chair of History and Heritage for the Department of Cultural Affairs.
And I think that was it. Jane's not with us.
Daniel.
Yeah, Chris, we actually have Daniel Zillman. Daniel, you want to introduce yourself?
Yep. How did I miss Daniel?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Daniel Zillman, the Director of Communications and Marketing for DCA out of the Office of the Secretary.
Very good. And do we have anybody from the International Space Hall of Fame?
Hi, good afternoon. Cliff Hudson, Chair of the Foundation.
Very good.
And I'm Johnny Powell, President of the Foundation.
Very good. Anyone else?
Just as a note, one other staff member is with us. That's Warren Eanes. He's the one you see with just the Museum of New Mexico symbol there. He's our IT specialist, and he's on board, obviously, in case we have any technical difficulties.
Definitely. Glad to have a person of that caliber with us. All right, our first action item is to approve the agenda for today's meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
Chair Elder, this is Paulo. Is that I would like to add an item to the agenda. It's just an announcement more than anything else.
Okay. So that would be under new business.
Yep. Thank you.
Right. You bet.
Don, this is Beth O'Leary. I'd like to add a comment on new business.
Okay, so Paula and Beth, all right. Any other changes to the agenda? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
All right, it has been, and I'm sorry, who initially moved?
I think you did.
Okay. Acting in my capacity, okay, so it has been moved and seconded to approve the agenda for today's meeting, and I will go through the roll here. So Chris Churchill.
Yeah, approve.
Rhonda Cross.
I approve.
Kimberly Fahey.
I approve.
John Hawes.
John Hawes, aye.
Carlos Martinez.
Aye.
James McAteer.
James McAteer, aye.
Paulo.
Aye.
And Beth.
Aye.
Bryce.
We'd lost Bryce for a second. He just rejoined us.
So Bryce, are you in favor of approving our amended agenda?
Yeah, sorry about that. In
No
favor.
problem. All right. So by a unanimous vote, we have approved the agenda for this meeting. And our next order of business is to approve the minutes from the December 11th, 2020 meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes from December 11th.
It's been moved by Paula. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, seconded by Carlos. Thank you so much. All right, and we'll repeat the process. Chris Churchill.
Approved.
Rhonda.
Aye.
Kimberly.
Approved.
John.
John Hawes, aye.
Carlos.
Carlos, aye.
James.
James McAteer, aye.
Paulo.
Well, aye again, yes.
Beth.
Don, is there usually after the discussion, isn't there usually a discussion after the motion?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
Well, I have just a couple of typos or clerical errors. I think the notes were well done. Something like Valerie Joy, I think her last name is Joe, not Valerie Joy, or maybe that's her code name. It would be real useful in these subsequent minutes to have each line numbered. So if there are changes, you can just go to the number on the page. So we start page 1, line 1. And then if there are any quick things to be changed, it's easier than looking around.
All right. Well, Beth, I am very glad you caught that. So I'm looking to see.
The other things are grammatical, like quotation marks when the person spoke. They're quite, in depth, and I didn't see any real errors, but it would be good to be able to refer to them rather than have them look around.
That is a very good suggestion, Beth. And so.
But otherwise, I approve. Thanks.
Okay. So I think we could make a notation that with certain grammatical changes to be addressed that we're approving. So is that a satisfactory way to phrase it?
I think so. And who do I send the changes to? Who's the scribe?
You send those to Sharon.
Sharon? Okay. I'll do that.
Sharon, that's your homework for the upcoming session. So. And last but not least, Bryce.
I approve.
All right. So with the notation that grammatical changes will be made to the minutes by unanimous vote. And Valerie, is that an acceptable way to handle that?
There are a couple ways to handle it. One is, since there is a draft set of minutes out, it is okay if the board would like for the grammatical changes to be fixed, and then this item could be tabled and it could be approved at the next meeting, if you think that's the best way to do it. Or I think that's the recommended approach, just so that you know that everyone has had a chance, and perhaps if people wanted to look a little bit more in depth at the notes, maybe there's different versions, spinning around, just to be absolutely certain, because I believe there might have been issues also, I believe, with perhaps not all the members getting it initially. So it might just be best to table at this time, give everyone the chance to review it, and then if you want to set a date for the next rough, not rough, but a more final draft to be sent, and then at that point, after that's sent, all people could be given X many days to send any changes they notice, just to be completely sure, and then just bring it up at the next meeting again, if that's what the commission wants to do. Because otherwise, right now, I don't think it's certain what is actually being approved, because I did look at my version of the notes and my name seems to be spelled correctly. So there might be different versions of this document out there in the.
Whoa, Valerie, are you on page 1? You're quoted as Valerie Joy, but maybe I got a different version.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I think there might be a little bit of confusion, so we should make sure we clear it up and make sure everyone has the same version, to be absolutely certain what the commission is approving at this time. Because I have under guest present and my name is correct. My version says December 11.2020 minutes parentheses 1 after it.
Mr. President, Mr. Chair, if I may ask a clarifying question of Valerie as well as to the intent of the minutes. Really, the intent of the minutes is to capture the substantive action that the committee or the commission took, rather than to serve as a transcript of the proceedings. And to that end, the corrections to the minutes that are made are noted in the subsequent set of minutes, as opposed to being retroactively made to what the commission approves. Is that correct? So fixing things like grammatical errors at this point and then approving doesn't actually change the record of what this body approved, correct?
That is correct, Madam Secretary. However, I am concerned that if there are typos and there are different versions of the documents out there, I'm not certain that all of the members of the commission have the exact same document. So even if there were typos, I think at this point, tabling it would be the best, send it out, get the approval, or get input from the members of the commission, and then the final document could be approved at the next meeting.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I was not arguing that point. I was more just wanting to clarify the intent of the minutes, and actually the process by which they become amended is that the version that is approved by this body will always remain intact. So things like grammatical errors are best, as you are suggesting, corrected before they're ever presented for approval.
Gotcha.
Or before they're approved, I should say.
Exactly.
And Beth, I do, now that I take a closer look, on page 1.5, it does say Valerie Joy asked Commissioner Elder. So you are absolutely correct. There is at least one place in there where your name is spelled incorrectly. So now I would entertain a motion to table the minutes until the commission has had a chance to make suggested grammatical and name changes.
So moved.
All right. It is been moved.
I'd like to second that, but I agree with that, but I had one comment. So I too noticed, some grammatical errors in the minutes, and I, thought, well, it didn't substantially change anything that took place at the meeting. And I wonder if this doesn't just speak to some procedural issue that we should talk about I'd be happy to, send back any of, my comments on those minor issues if they're desired by whomever would like them. In that case, we probably should get them with a specific deadline to return any corrections. And that would help me know, to whom to respond and what level of editing one's looking for. And I'm happy to do it either way. I didn't find anything wrong substantively with the minutes, but I was just looking past the minor things. And I'm happy to do it either way.
John, your point is well taken. And this may be something that we would want to put on the agenda to address at a later meeting, how to proceed in this matter. But for now, I guess a good stopgap measure is to just table it, ask you to make changes, suggested changes, and then we can vote on in the next meeting. So is that a sense of what, Beth, you moved, and John, you're seconding?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, is there any discussion about the new motion? Hearing none, let's go to a vote on the new motion to table approval of the minutes from the December 11th meeting, and then make suggested changes and vote on it at our next meeting. So, Chris?
Agreed.
Okay, Rhonda?
Aye.
Kimberly?
Agreed.
John?
John Hawes, aye.
Carlos?
Carlos, aye.
James?
James McAteer, aye.
Paulo?
Aye.
Beth?
Beth, aye.
And Bryce?
Aye.
Okay, it has been voted unanimously to table the approval of the minutes from the December 11th meeting with changes to be suggested and a vote taken at our next meeting. All right, our next action item is...
Pardon me,
Yeah.
Chair. I would just suggest that for this set of minutes, I understand the motion has been taken. If the commission wants to provide guidance to its staff about how it would like those suggestions from each of the members to be transmitted back to the commission staff, that could be a directive at this point. It does not require a vote. It is just internal discussion of how to proceed for this so that it will be ready for the next meeting that can be relayed at this time.
Valerie, that's a very logical suggestion. And would you suggest that individual members be given a certain amount of time to get Sharon suggested changes, and that by a certain time Sharon would then send those changes back out to us to look at?
Yes, I would suggest that with whatever time period the commission would think is appropriate.
Okay.
Or you as the chair, it's you can survey the members to figure out what would be the best time periods for both the members as well as the commission staff.
Very good. So Valerie, are you is this something that I could talk about after the meeting with the individual commissioners and say, how long do you think it would take you? Or is this something we should address right now?
I think since we're on this issue and it's fresh in everyone's mind, it's not something I think that's very private or anything like that. And it would be clear to everyone, as well as you have a recording of it, of how the commission will proceed on this one. And then in the future, as you evaluate how it works going forward, it could be adjusted, outside of the public meeting as well.
Valerie, that's why we have you on the on the job. That's a very good opinion. So I would entertain a discussion. Yes, Chris.
If I just make the suggestion that I think the easiest thing is, since we meet quarterly, and so there's 3 months in between each meeting, if we just give Sharon a month, say that by a month after the meeting, she has the minutes out, and then give everybody, 2 weeks to review them, get the suggestions back to her, and then she sends it out again at that point in time with the corrections, that gives us a month essentially to 2 months really, to review the minutes for any corrections that anybody would be wanting to submit.
So your suggestion is 30 days, and then she would send out the corrections?
Yes. Yeah, we would give everybody a couple of weeks to review it.
I'll just point out, I believe a draft of the meeting minutes are required, I believe, within 10 days of the meeting. So as long as that is transmitted at that time period, of course, you could give a month or longer for the commission members to send it back.
Okay, that's very helpful clarification. So 10 days from the conclusion of a meeting, the commissioners would get a rough draft of the minutes. We would have
10 days before.
Okay.
Can I make
Yes,
a comment, Don? I
Yeah.
believe it's 10 days before we need the agenda, and our agenda was a bit late. But I think if we have the minutes in that same package, that we can have the minutes 10 days before the meeting, which gives us time to review anything, any new minutes or revised minutes, and also the agenda.
Chris Orwell,
Right now,
is that?
I think it's right now, the calculation is from the date of the meeting. When you have the meeting, so today we have the meeting on March 12th. So I forget if it's 10 working days or 10 business days, the meeting minutes should be prepared. So 10 days from today, and I'll figure, because I'll look at it very closely in a minute. The meeting minutes should be prepared. So approximately, say, March 22nd, a draft of the minutes should be sent out, and then work from there. I understand what Commissioner Beth is saying about the timeliness of the agenda and the other items, but we can address that separately, I believe.
So I'm glad, thank you for the clarif, because that's what I thought you were saying. So 10 days from now, we'll get a draft of the minutes from this meeting, and then we need to establish a period of time by which we can get back to Sharon with our suggested changes. Okay. And Chris, do you think, well, Sharon, let's ask you, we'll bring in you. Do you think that 14 days would be a sufficient amount of time to incorporate suggested changes that we might make?
I think 14 days is a good time. And just so you all know that, so when I do the minutes, and I've seen different. So when you're writing something, when you're transcribing something, we don't all speak grammatically correct all the time. So what you're getting is actually what people are saying. So I apologize for that, but I'll be more careful from here on out. But yeah.
Oh no, Sharon, you've always quoted me at 100% accurately. So that's the way I actually talk. So, and we certainly appreciate all that you do, and we hope that you're not taking this as a personal criticism, because we love everybody on the staff, and we couldn't have the museum that we do without you. So I hope you're accepting it in that way.
I am. Thank you.
Okay, you bet. All right, well, if that is acceptable, that will be the directive that we'll give to the museum, is that we'd like minutes 10 either business days or calendar days, and then Sharon will have 2 weeks to make suggested changes, and then they'll be ready for approval at the next meeting. So any further discussion on that matter? And thank you. I certainly learned a lot from this discussion, so I am much smarter for my attendance. Now, our next action item is election of officers. And if you'll remember back to December 11th, that was an action item, but because virtually all of you, with the exception of Jackie Pryor and myself, were new to the commission, we decided to defer to today. So I would open up the floor to discussion about election of officers at this point. Yes, Ben.
I'd like to move to nominate John Hawes to be the chair of the commission.
Very good. John, would you be willing to accept such an august and distinguished position?
Well, I would be willing to accept that, and I would hope that others would help me figure out how to do that. So yes, I'd be willing to take that nomination.
Well, John, if I could handle it, how difficult can it be? So, is there anybody else that would like to nominate anyone else to be the chair?
Paulo here, Chair. I would like to second the motion for John. And I was wondering if this come with a salary increase payment.
It's double.
Yes, exactly. We could even triple it if we wanted to. But anyone else that would like to nominate a person to become the chair of the commission? All right. Well, let us. It's my last official duty here as the chair. I'll go through and call the roll. Chris Churchill.
Support.
Rhonda?
Yes, I support, approve.
Very good. Kimberly?
I approve.
Very good. And John? You can vote for yourself if you want to.
I suppose that's in order, so I'll say I accept and approve.
Very good. And Carlos?
I support.
And James?
James McAteer, aye.
Paulo?
Aye.
And Beth?
I approve.
And Bryce?
Aye. Approve.
Very good. Well, by unanimous votes, we would like to congratulate John Hawes, who has become the new chairman of the commission. And as my last official say, it was a pleasure and an honor to guide the transition from an older commission to the new commission. And I think you've made a very wise choice. And John, I will turn the meeting over to your good hands.
Well, thank you, Don, and everyone. I will attempt to do my best at this, and I appreciate any advice along the way. With that, I think we are on to agenda item number 6. Unless there are other officers that we did not talk about need to be elected.
There is a vice chair that we need to elect.
Well, then, in that case, we're still on item number 5, and I would solicit any nominations for a vice chair. And one can nominate oneself, as I understand.
James McAteer, I'd like to nominate Beth.
Well, that's payback, isn't it?
I did not put it to it.
If you hadn't done that, Beth, I was going to.
Okay.
I guess I'll second that.
Fine.
Okay, then, that has been moved and seconded. Beth O'Leary, I would ask, are you willing to accept this?
Yes.
Okay. I am going to need a little bit of help with the roll call because I don't have a alphabetized, I don't have a list of all of the commissioners, but let me attempt to go around, and if I miss someone, please give me a hand here.
Hey, John, if you open up your chat, I think it might show all the member or participants if you click on your participants.
Well, yes, I can see them all.
Okay.
And I'm probably going to skip over. I can see all of your names, but my My fear is I'm gonna call on the wrong person. So let me go around who I think is all on the commission, and I'll get this straight within the next time around. Carlos?
I approve.
James?
James McAteer, aye.
Let's see, Beth?
I approve.
Chris?
I approve.
Don?
I approve.
Paulo?
Paulo, aye.
Kimberly?
I approve.
Bryce?
I approve.
And have I missed someone on the commission?
Rhonda.
Rhonda, I'm sorry, apologize.
I approve.
Thank you. Apologies for that. Okay, it was moved and accepted and unanimous consent. Beth O'Leary, your vice chair.
You're a vice or just a vice chair?
I'll be sure to schedule some absences now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, so that does conclude then action item number 5. And that will move on to number 6, which is approval of standing rule number 1. I believe for that, Valerie, we have some information that we need from you on that. I think it was a presentation or?
Right, I had distributed a draft of standing rule number 1 to all commission members. Hopefully you've had a chance to review it. And then I was just going to go through a few highlights, and then a vote would be appropriate, a motion, and then a vote would be appropriate. I'm just trying to
I'll turn the floor over to you to tell us what you need to tell us about standing rule number 1 then.
Sure. Just pull it up. Okay. So this is an annual requirement for the commission to undertake, and it's just a reminder of, the requirements of the Open Meetings Act, which, there was that long drawn out presentation last meeting, which I'm not doing today. So specifically that this annual resolution or standing rule just states that notice of regular meeting shall be given 10 days in advance of the meeting, has to tell how the copy of the agenda may be obtained. At the discretion of the board, it could be, provided at the same time as the notice of the meeting, or the rules require, or the statute requires that it is provided at least 72 hours prior to the actual meeting date and time. Okay. So that's basically what's stated in paragraph 2. Also, there's provisions for special meetings that can be called by the commission chairman or a majority of the members, where 3 days advance notice is required, as well as the agenda should also be provided within 72 hours prior to that meeting. And then the third situation is the emergency meetings, which may be called when there are unforeseen circumstances that demand immediate action to protect the health, safety, and property of citizens, or protect the public body itself from substantial financial loss. And of course, those situations should be avoided, but if they do come up, there are provisions to do that. And then that requires 24 hours notice, and it can be 24 hours or less, I believe, for the agenda, or you just do it at the same time. And then after you have the meeting, you have to report what happened during that meeting to the Attorney General's office. So that's basically paragraph 4. And then for paragraph 5, it just basically states that how the date, time, place, and agenda is posted. In particular, for this standing resolution, if adopted by the commission, it should be located at the museum, at 3198 State Road 2001 in Alamogordo, New Mexico, as well as on the museum's website, and from the Office of Cultural Affairs, located at 407 Galisteo Street, Suite 260 in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And then also if entities such as as broadcast stations licensed by the Federal Communications Commission and newspapers of general circulation, which have made a request for these types of public notices from this the Museum Commission, then those would need to be distributed as well. And in particular, for the purpose of, so that's for a regular meeting. For purposes of special meetings and emergency meetings, it's basically all of the same places that this information would be posted for the notices. Number 7, paragraph 7 discusses that if you are an individual with a disability who is in need of a reader, amplifier, qualified sign language interpreter, or any other form of auxiliary aid or service to attend, when that can happen, or participate in the hearing or meeting, to contact, we have a phone number here, 575-437-2840, at least 5 days prior to the meeting or as soon as possible. And that public documents, including the agenda and minutes, can be provided in various accessible formats. And just, call that same number if that person needs such a service. And discusses the subject matters that allow the commission to close an open meeting and go into closed executive session. And that process is outlined in 8A, B, C, and D. And then just number 9 and 10 are discussing how the commission can hold a meeting, indicating that telephone conferencing or video conferencing equipment is appropriate when we cannot attend in person, especially in these times. And paragraph 10 just specifically discusses the coronavirus pandemic, that virtual attendance is acceptable by members of the commission. And that's it. If there are any questions, feel free to ask. If you want to make any changes, I believe a discussion could be had as to this document that was presented to the commission. Thank you.
I have just one question of my own, and that is just on changes from the previous version of Standing Rule 1. What has been changed in this version versus the previous version?
I changed some wording because there's some more standard wording about video conferencing platforms, and adding the COVID provision about virtual attendance of the commission members. Otherwise, I think the old version that was adopted in 2019 discussed publication of the notice of the regular meetings in the newspaper. Mm-hmm. So the commission can decide if that's something they want to put back in or leave it out. But that's the main thing. Everything else is pretty much the same. I might have changed some wording here and there, but that's about it. If you want a copy of the old one, I could, of course, provide that to you.
I don't. I was just curious as to what the changes were, and if any were substantive. It doesn't sound as though there were any. So,
John, I will move that we approve the revised Standing Rule 1.
I believe there still is some open discussion. The vice chair has a question, I believe.
Yes, I'm the grammar police in this meeting. I think that the museum is in Alamogordo, not Alamogordo, unless they change the word. So on line 2, on the platform hosted from Alamogordo.
Okay, I will change that spelling error. My apologies. That was my spelling error.
No, that's okay.
Editorial change.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions for Valerie Jo, or any other discussion points on Standing Rule number 1?
And I'll reintroduce my motion.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Very well. We'll take the roll. The motion is on the table to approve Standing Rule number 1. Carlos?
Aye.
James?
James McAteer, aye.
Linda?
Aye.
Beth?
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Don,
Don Elder, aye.
let's see, Paulo,
Paulo, aye.
Kimberly,
I approve standing rule number 1.
and Bryce,
I approve.
and I also vote aye. Have I forgotten anyone this time around?
Me again.
I did call you, Rhonda. I'm sorry.
Aye.
I thought I did. My apologies. Okay, standing rule number 1 has been approved. And I think the next item on our agenda is the DCA report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry for the delay as I found my mute button. And congratulations on your new position, and sincere gratitude to past Chair Doc Elder, particularly for proceeding with this meeting, sir. It's truly appreciated, and very much shows your dedication to this museum to have started out chairing this meeting today. So thank you for that, Doctor. So we are 9 days left in the legislative session. DCA's operating budget is in relatively good condition. Yesterday afternoon, we received notice that about $400,000 had been added back into the budget for museums and historic sites, and all of that money is dedicated to personnel. So that will help greatly in recovering from some of the losses in staffing during the hiring freeze of the pandemic, as well as the budget cuts that were taken at the end of FY20 and going into FY22. So that is certainly good news. We're just about $500,000 short from where we started out in FY21 budget. So that's good news for the department. No word on capital yet, but for those of you who have helped with advocacy around that, particularly our friends and partners at the foundation, thank you so much for doing that. And we're very optimistic that that will be somewhere in the range of $4 to $6 million. SB 70, which is the appropriation through the public project revolving loan fund to the Cultural Affairs Infrastructure Fund. That's $5 million. That passed House Finance yesterday and is now headed to the House floor. So we are optimistic in the coming 9 days that will receive its final approval from the House and head up to the governor for signature. There was also this year what is called the Junior Bill, which is an additional appropriation that the legislators themselves make outside of the executive budget and outside of the op budget. And I am very pleased to report that Space History Museum received an allocation in that Junior Bill, which is still, I believe, pending approval, although I haven't checked today. And Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was $197,000 to this particular museum specifically for exhibits. So again, I think a lot of the credit for that goes to the advocacy efforts of this body, as well as especially our foundation partners. So thank you for that. Fingers crossed that that will go through. Also pleased to report that I was able to get down to Alamogordo a few weeks ago. Had the pleasure of seeing Chris in person for the first time in a very long time. And also taking a look at some of the work going on at the museum, which is impressive and a little frightening. And also the reason that the museum remains closed. So Chris will cover some of that updating and detail in his report, but very pleased to see the long overdue repairs being made. And I think that we have made the right decision in keeping the museum closed until those repairs are at a better standpoint. I don't think it'd be a very good experience right now for our visitors to come and have to use porta potties and have to step over contractors and other things. So looking forward to reopening with brand new restrooms, new exhibit flows, all sorts of great things. And really want to thank Chris and Billy and their team for everything that they're doing to make those repairs work on site, and very pleased that we at DCA up in Santa Fe can help support that work whenever possible. And then I know that Chris, I'm not sure if Chris will cover it in his plans, but Chris will be moving ahead with advertising some summer camps. We don't know yet what form those camps will take place, whether they'll be all virtual, some type of hybrid, or possibly in person. I would say with schools going back to full-time in-person learning on April 5th, it's probably looking very hopeful for in-person summer camps, which I know is very important to the museum and the foundation. But again, with the pandemic, I think there's always special considerations and extra caution is due. There's different types of liability involved now in summer camp operations than there normally is. But kudos to Chris and his education staff for really plowing forward and finding a path on that. Mr. Chair, if I may have a few more minutes of the commission's time, I would like to just quickly open it up for Patrick Moore, who's Chair of Arts and Sciences, to say any reports that he may have, as well as Daniel, who is attending these meetings in his capacity as Communication and Marketing Manager for the department, to really understand what's going on in the divisions a little bit closer, if that's acceptable. Thank you, sir. Patrick?
Thank you, Madam Secretary, and thank you everybody for being here today. I think the Secretary covered a great deal of this, and thank you, Madam Secretary, for being here. I know I was going to carry the weight on this one, but wasn't sure that my connectivity would work, so she did a wonderful job of recapping these and far more current, great news about our additional resources for personnel, which is good. I don't want to steal any of Chris's thunder. I know there are a number of things we're working on, certainly being in the bathroom. So I appreciate, Chris, you're back to the space station rather than being in the restrooms as you had for your Zoom background in the past. It looks a little like the surface of Mars, which is a great interpretive approach, but not so great for ADA compliance or for anybody else who may want to be in there. It has been a challenge, I think, getting through this pandemic, knowing that there have been ups and downs, and it's great to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I really applaud Chris, Billy, his staff there on the really remarkable things they've done on social media and doing outreach in times which we really had to reinvent how it was we approached engagement with our publics and how it was that we worked together with DCA. So I think there are a lot of really great things that are moving forward that we don't want to lose sight of. We don't want to let them become an afterthought, but rather how can they complement our accomplishments. So I don't want to take up any time, and I'll pass this over to Daniel Zillman, who has been really critical in creating sort of our one DCA approach over the last year. Daniel.
Thank you, Patrick. Yes, so it's been a year to the day next Friday that we convened a group of representatives from all of the divisions across DCA to begin speaking about social media in a collective way. And I think that in the past year, we've solved a lot of problems. We've learned a lot of new things, and it's worked really well. And as we, pivot back to in-person visitors, we're even better connected than ever before. So really happy to be here. Happy to be working very closely with Kathy Harper, who's wonderful. And thank you for having me today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anything else from the DCA, Madam Secretary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing, although I'm always happy to stand for questions or receive comments and concerns.
Any further questions or discussion before we move on the agenda? Very well. And I don't think any of these remaining items other than, I don't think there's any vote on this. Is that correct? believe that's the order. It's
There's no vote on it.
yeah. Okay, I think then item number 8 is comments from the foundation.
Okay, well, good afternoon. This is Cliff Hudson, Chair of the Foundation, and I'll keep it very short and brief because I know we're running along here on time with the meeting, but I'm very pleased to be here. We're excited about the path forward for the museum, the relationship, the collaborative relationship from the foundation and working with Chris and the team there is so important to us. And we really want to be an asset and supportive to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to support the museum's needs. So we're looking forward to continuing that relationship. We had a great discussion with Patrick about a week ago, and we talked about putting our long-term strategy together and make sure that it is in sync in partnership with the museum. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Johnny and give a brief report about the gift shop. We have been able to continue operations during the closure at White Sands Mall for our gift shop. And it's really been an asset to keep us out in the community, but most importantly, protect the employees of the gift shop to give that continuity. So Johnny?
Well, thanks, Cliff, and thanks to the commission and the museum. And my report's going to be so brief that Cliff just covered everything I was going to say. So anyway, we are glad that we are out there and we have been able to continue our operations. And we have also been pretty blessed. We've been able to seek out some grant opportunities that have really helped us through our operational costs through this time. So we hope that as things open up and we get back in shape, that the foundation's still in as good a shape as it's ever been. And so we're just ready to get back to work. And that's what I have.
Well, thank you, Johnny. Just one question from me for either Cliff or Johnny. Should members of the commission desire to learn a little bit more information about the foundation or its relationship with the museum, where would be the best place for us to look for that information?
Well, we'd be happy to share any of that. We do have a little bit of history on our website. We do have a website, spacehalloffame.org. You can visit that. But that's something as far as the history and such as that is that I find interesting and something that we should probably look at developing an actual storyline for that. So, but right now the website would be your best bet.
All right, thank you.
And then we're more than happy to sponsor any kind of calls or inquiries as well. If we want to set up a sidebar Zoom, but please call on us. We'd welcome that opportunity.
I do have a question. Does the gift shop have an online component or is it just a physical shop?
Yes, we are online. There's a link from the website that I just mentioned, spacehalloffame.org. Go to the shop. And we have been able to translate all of our inventory online. So if it's online, it's actually in stock. So you'll get it. So but feel free to visit the shop and purchase lots and lots of stuff.
Well, certainly consider that. And hopefully some members of the public who are watching will pick up on that as well. Thank you very much for your work with all of that. Are there any other questions for the foundation? Okay. Hearing none, I think now we'll move on to the director's report. Chris, I know that you have a lot on your plate and a lot to talk about.
Yeah,
yours.
And I know the meeting is already gone, so we're ways into it. So I'll try and keep it as short as possible, but there's quite a bit to pass out, and I'll try and reference back to the report where I can. First thing, on the status of projects, I'll get into that in a moment, but as far as reopening, we had to delay reopening, as you heard the secretary mention, really for a very obvious reason. The restroom work, as we were in the fall and heading into the winter, we moved forward with the restroom job. It got going in January, and very quickly, as we find in most any renovation, we ran into some significant problems. Most the largest of those was the concrete and the piping issues, and you'll see some pictures of that. Basically, it set up the problem where we were not going to have restrooms available in the building until potentially, we're looking at May, the first week in May. When we took a look at the costs for restrooms, because we didn't just want to put a standard porta potty out there. If we're going to have visitors, we want something a bit nicer, one of those trailer units. Much of the units in this area were sucked up over at the Holloman Air Force Base. So bringing one in here, it was coming from distance. Service for it was coming from distance, et cetera. And it was going to be actually over $2,000 a week. At that point in time, especially with the budgetary issues that DCA has been facing, we made the decision that it really was best for us to stay and remain closed. Also, because we have a ton of other work going on, as you'll see here in a moment. And we're going to stay closed until we can get two things done. The noisy work of the restrooms, they're still jackhammering in the restrooms right now, and we're essentially halfway through March. And then so that created a noise and a dirt and a dust issue. We wanted to have restrooms available up on at least the second and fourth floor of the museum. And then the last item was try and get as much of this other work done as possible. And you'll see all that here in a moment. So right now our target date, and it is just a target, is May 7th. That may move left or right depending on what happens with the contractors and the other jobs. But we have put out word, we have put out public releases. Daniel helped with that, and Kathy and her team worked on that one, that our target is May 7th, right? Or in the first week in May. And internally, we're talking May 7th. And that's Space Day as well. So that's kind of why we've chosen that day. So that kind of is that issue about reopening, just so you understand what's going on. As far as the personnel updates, the budget, what we're looking at this year, obviously we have no real earned income besides occasional, not rentals, but we're actually going to be working on an exhibit design for the Air Force out at the 49th Wing. So that's coming down the pipe. That will earn us a little bit of money. But as far as people coming in to the building, nothing. That is not killing us at the moment. You heard the secretary talking about it. DCA has a lot of issues with budget deficit. But what we're doing is just maintaining our spending extremely low. We are not spending monies that we normally would at this point in time. We're just spending essentially on essentials. And we're not spending any monies out of our exhibit fund. Every year when we earn money, 15% of that goes into an exhibit fund that accumulates over time. And we do have funds that have built up in that. We're not using any of those monies just in case they're necessary for DCA to be able to ensure that the personnel budget remains completely valid throughout the year. So budget-wise, we're, as opposed to a private museum, and I know not tons of friends who are in that business and who came from it, where they have had issues. We are actually okay with the monies from the general fund supporting our operations, and we're not having to make any cuts at this point in time. We're just limiting the spending that we might normally have done. Personnel-wise, in the report listed everything. There was one omission in the report, and that is that we had one of our restoration and exhibit technicians, Natalie. She left. She had come to us from the Smithsonian and the Capitol in Washington, D.C., worked for us for a few years, and then just left here in the winter. She got a job offer up in Colorado, in Denver, at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, and we could not match the salary that she was going to get up there. So sadly, we lost her, and that is a big loss for us. We are still in a hiring freeze, although we are looking at and discussing the possibility of hiring a receptionist, because currently we normally have 3. We're currently at 2. And so before we reopen, or sometime soon after we were reopening, we would like to have a 3rd receptionist of some sort available. And we're working with DCA on how to do that right now. Now I'll get into the repairs and upgrades and discussion of all of that. To do it, I want to share my screen. And so, can everybody see the screen? See the picture there of the wagon with all the rocks?
Yes.
Just wanted to make sure. So that's just a starter, just showing this is the world that we're living in right now at the museum, and how dirty, dusty, etc. Just kind of wanted you to get, just a little feel for for how bad things are. These are the restrooms as they looked before we started the renovation, and this is why we did the renovation. I just want you to see this again so you understand why we were doing it. When I talk about the piping and the condition of the piping, the cast iron piping has been found in the museum to be in absolutely horrid condition, both inside and outside. The strange thing is that the piping in the Tombaugh building, which we're also renovating those restrooms, is in much better condition, even though that building is only 4 years younger. One was built in 76, one was built in 80. So you'd think they'd both be in the same condition, but the Tombaugh building is actually in pretty good condition, whereas the museum is in very, very bad condition. The concrete was in horrible condition. That caused us to have to rip out, as you can see here, all of the concrete. This is the men's room. These two pictures right here of as they were jackhammering it out. And then they're not able to bring in big equipment to get it out. So they're having to shovel and carry out all of the rocks, etc. So that's a big issue, needless to say. This is as that same area in the men's room looks now. It still looks a bit like the surface of Mars, but the new piping going in, new PVC and drains into those areas. This is the women's room. This was literally taken, this picture was taken yesterday inside the women's room, and you can see them jackhammering and digging down to get at the cast iron pipes that were under the old concrete and then underground beyond that. So this is what's causing the delay, is this amount of work needing to be done, and there being no way to really do it with large equipment. Much of it's having to be done with shovels and hands. So it's created a difficult time. Meanwhile, up on the second floor and the fourth floor in the Tombaugh Theater, this is a picture inside the Tombaugh Theater. The floors are pretty much done. There's a little bit of concrete that needs to be repoured, and then the new surfaces can go down, but they're working on the walls already. The new drywall is up for the most part, and now they're putting on the tile into those, into those areas as well. So those restrooms are actually proceeding along and should be done as we expect on schedule. Hopefully, at least as far as the Hubbard or the second and fourth floor by the first week of May. Elsewhere, maybe a little bit later. The next big project that we got going on is HVAC and electrical at the Museum Support Center. These are the old panels at the Museum Support Center. As you can see, they were not in great condition. So this is the new outside panel going in. PNM will be wiring new 600 amp service to that panel. And then it comes into the building just to the left of those gentlemen there. You see two very large pipes going into that first panel, and then a second panel next to the old stuff that is being rewired right now. So that entire building essentially is getting an electrical rewire in its entirety that will make it much nicer, easier to know where everything's powered from, and much better condition for operating the heavy equipment that we do over at the Museum Support Center. Next thing that I wanted to talk about was Xeriscaping, and I wanted you all to see.
One quick question.
Oh, yes.
Your report mentioned something about an asbestos remediation issue.
Yes, with the restrooms on the second and fourth floor of the museum, not the first floor and not the Tombaugh. The tiling in those spaces did have some amounts of asbestos inside of it. And so the first week in January of actual work was the asbestos removal, and it only took them 4 days.
All right, thank you.
On the Xeriscaping, I just wanted you all to see these pictures. This is what the campus looked like in 2013. And if you look down, obviously, with the museum, you can see there was attempts at landscaping, symbols that have been done decades ago that were dead, many dying plants all around here. It just wasn't in great condition there. And then this is what, if you take a look at the blue areas, that is places where we have xeriscaped or put in in the upper portion there, you see that right next to the missile there, we put a playground up there. So we have finished xeriscaping in the blue areas, and then the green area, we just finished xeriscaping within the last month. Now, the next phase of it will be to xeriscape these areas that you see in yellow, just so that you know that we're not done yet. This is a many, many year process. We figured it was going to take 10 to 12 years to do all of the xeriscaping on campus as we do it in phases. A little bit further down the hill, that's the Tombaugh Theater building on the left and the upper and lower parking lots. This is just how it looked. You can see it was just general landscape alongside of it. And I don't have the aerial pictures because Google hasn't given us a new satellite view since we've done all this xeriscaping. Maybe we'll send up a drone at some point in time. But these areas in blue have been xeriscaped already, and it looks absolutely fantastic. And then the yellow is the next phases to get xeriscaped in this area. Now, as you look on the road, you see right here where I've got my mouse is where our main gate to the museum is. And then what we have done, we had done all the areas alongside the road from the gate up to the museum. And then this year we did all of these areas all the way down to scenic as well. And so that is xeriscaped on either side of the road. What does this allow us to do? Maintenance of it is so much easier than what we used to have to do, where literally our maintenance personnel were mowing the dirt and rocks to keep weeds and everything else down. Now they are not having to do that. Everything outside of the xeriscaping is allowed to just grow wild, as you would expect. And here is some of the new xeriscaping alongside the rocket park that will allow us to put a lot of new large artifacts out into that area as well, specifically as we take a look at a couple of aircraft in the future. This would be a place where they would go in the areas just adjacent and down from the rocket park. And then there's alongside the road going up to the museum. The lighting, I showed you this picture before, just wanted to give you an update that literally in the last couple of days, those lights that were down at the bottom, that we ran into a problem with children climbing up the concrete and grabbing a hold of and hanging off of them. Those are being moved up to the top of the pillars at this location and this location. The bottom portions have been removed and they are currently rewiring the new lights up to the top. They'll be mounted within the next 2 to 3 weeks. And then we'll be relighting the building at night as well, so that we have a presence visibly during both the day and the night. The security systems we have added in, or we are adding in all new RFID badged security for the admin spaces, the IT spaces, and the curatorial spaces. This is the door going into the admin offices, and you can see there's a RFID reader right there. And then these are the back entrances. The primate training facility sign that you see there, that is a joke sign that is at the entrance to my office. And there is an RFID reader there. And then this is the IT server room right adjacent to my office as well. So that system is going in. It's going very smoothly in this building and in the Hubbard as well. I had one question from a commissioner about the sealing of those cracks. This is the corners of the pillars, and this is the fact of you being able to see visible light out through there. And so we are getting water coming in through these cracks and into our elevator wells. And so we had gotten authorization back earlier this year to move forward on this project, but then there were questions about sealing both the interior and exterior. Could we just do the exterior now and then do the interior later? We were working on getting answers to those questions, got them answered, submitted up the paperwork, and when we submitted up the paperwork, it was right as all of the restroom work was getting going, and it got essentially just lost in the great shuffle. And it was just in the last week that we sat there and said, whatever happened to, and asked the questions and found out that it had just gotten lost in the great number of projects and everything that was going on. And so it is now resubmitted and going up, and work should get going on it in about 3 weeks based on our estimate of the approval time for the purchase order, and then also for the company having the crane available, because they're going to have to crane up personnel to caulk the outside of the building from bottom to top. This is the laboratory, the university, just to give you an update on the turnover of the building, the Tombaugh building. We own the land, the university, New Mexico State University owns the actual building itself, although we use 85% of the interior of the building, and that's just what has happened over the decades since 1980. The back room, there's a laboratory, and then to the right, you see an opening. Behind that area, there was a storage room, and then there's a little hallway to the left. There was a small storage room and an office down that hallway. All of these spaces were the only areas still being used by NMSU. Two things are happening. One of them is almost complete. We're just awaiting on some issues with the title for the land to be cleared up with one of the title companies here in Alamogordo for them to turn over the entire building to the Department of Cultural Affairs. In the meantime, similar to what they have done in the past, the university has turned over officially all of these spaces, the laboratory, the storage rooms, and the office to the museums for use. So we have been working on them. There's a picture of the lab. There's this picture of what the lab looks like today. So what we did, we are repainting it, removing all the chalkboard. And then also to the left over here, you see we've kind of walled in where that hallway was. What's going on is that behind this door where the storage room is going to be an office space for 3 educators. Then down that hallway, which now actually has a new door on the outside that goes straight into the main Tombaugh hallways, is where the office is for Dave Dooling, our education director, and then a small storage room in between. So we are refurbishing that room, putting in new whiteboards, 10 foot by 4 foot, new screens, a projector, and repainting and sprucing up the space. There's a similar picture of the staff painting in the inside of the room, and you can see the construction on that door to the outside. This is that storage room. The door that you see here is the one coming from the lab. Where I'm standing is the entry from the hallway. And then you're looking, you see there's an old evacuation system right here because this was used to store chemicals inside here. And then what's happening in the room, you can see this is the same room now. We have added electrical into here, new lighting, painted the room, removed the ventilation system. We are adding in new HVAC into the ceiling to provide fresh air into the room. And new flooring will be going in as well, carpeting here and in the hallway down to the offices. So it's a huge upgrade for us to bring our educators into one space, essentially one big bullpen area where they're spread out right now. And we even have educators officing in what should be essentially hallway storage areas. And so this will be a big upgrade for them. And we're very excited about that for it being available to them once we reopen. And this is the outside. There's the door into the lab, and this is the door into the hallway that we have added in as well. And then down in this is the old IMAX projector and the take-up reel system, ventilation, the large rails, the storage unit, et cetera. This is what it looked like after we shut it down, after finishing operations and installing the digital system. This is what it looked like not too long ago after we removed all of the IMAX system. And this is what it looks like today. You can see that there's a platform that's been built. This picture was taken this morning. A platform that's been built here over the old pit and preparing us for this room is getting all new paint, refurbished ceiling tiles, all new lights into it, and new flooring as well. And then on top of the old take-up reel system, there's going to be a large work desk, not a sitting work desk for computers, but for working on projects, outreach equipment, things like that, camp programs. So that we'll be in this, we're repurposing the entire room and what was left over that we were not able to remove out of that room. On the chronograph vaults, these should be this is for the chronograph and the moon rock. And I showed you these designs with the pictures before. These are scheduled to be delivered to us within the next couple of weeks, and then we'll start installing them up on the 3rd floor in the Human Spaceflight Gallery. Simultaneously, when we're installing those, we will probably likely start installing a couple of these other interactives, the Mars Flyer that is currently sitting in storage at the Museum Support Center, and the Stargazer telescope up on the 5th floor, where it is its eventual location now that we have new walls built in that exhibit area as well. And these are the 2 items sitting in storage over at the Museum Support Center. The lighting, we will have no incandescent or fluorescent lights left on campus by the end of the project that is currently going on. This is just one of the new lights that's going in. They fit into the drop ceilings in many locations. This is one of the drop ceiling units. It goes into a 2x4 space, 2 foot by 4 foot. This is how thin it is, which absolutely blew me away when I saw it. The last set of LED lights that we put into the museum were much thicker than this. The spread on these lights is completely even, and we actually have adjustments to these lights available for both frequency and intensity. So they're very nice. PNM is providing us a very large discount on these lights in conjunction with the contractor to the tune of $18,000. And then you heard me mention the walls. These were the old walls in the museum. You can see there's just pieces of melamine that were attached. This is concrete down here alongside this. And it used to be that we just had 8x10 plaques for the inductees that were hung up on these walls. Not really a great way to show how significant the accomplishments are of these inductees. And here's, kind of the same wall area. These are on the rampways going from floor to floor. This is what the wall looks like. These are what the walls look like now, as we have completely framed out and put up new walls in those spaces. And then these are the graphics that have gone up in just the last couple of weeks. We still have many more weeks of graphics to put up. This is just a background mural that is behind what will be the new hexagon-shaped placards for the inductees that are going in as well. So we're very excited about that project. And where we have already done this, people absolutely love the look of it. People will actually just look at the mural background as they're going through, because there's so much visual information on just this, and most of this will be covered up when we put the new placards on the front of it with the information about the inductees. There's just another view looking up on one of the other ramps. And then up on the 5th floor in the exhibit area, this is what it used to look like, where the capsules were sitting, and there was an old mural, an Earth view mural. On the other side of that wall is actually where our admin offices are located. There used to be windows there, and then it was put up with these melamine walls. And then the platform, this used to be open all the way down to the floors below, but the structure was built. The structure under those models was spongy. And so it was, in our opinion, dangerous to walk on and to, in the long term, continue to have these very expensive models sitting on top of. Eventually, there's going to be a new display that goes along with the pop culture exhibit going in there for the atomic pop culture of the 40s and 50s and the lead up to Sputnik. But that is not yet. The models were just going back in. This is what it looks like now. We completely replaced all the walls there, smoothed out the walls and repainted everything in here, put a new structured surface on this location and repainted it. So it's now extremely strong and supports those models onto there. And then through the rest of the gallery, this is kind of showing you how you would walk around from here to go down to the rampway, a little bit of a hiding wall here, because it will be hiding a Sputnik that will be right behind that wall. And as you enter into here on these large 9-foot walls here, in this area will be a lot of the atomic pop culture to put people in the mood of what it was like in the mid to late 1950s of that era. And this is just looking a little bit further in the right, showing that now people, they enter over here on the other side of this wall, and then they go around to the overlook and then come into this space. So we're changing the route that people take through the museum as well. And then this is what the office is on the other side of that wall. You see there's windows here, but on the other side, you see it's just brown. That's the melamine that used to be on the walls on the other side. Now there's a wall structure. But these windows, we couldn't do much with them. They weren't looking over anything anymore. And you can see behind all the desks there. So what's happened now is that area is my office, but we've started we've put the walls here as well so that we can mount graphics and information and everything else to these walls in the office spaces as well. And it's not just these windows that were serving zero purpose. And then outside the admin spaces over here, there's the large 9-foot wall. We still are not done, obviously. There's tons of painting. You can see this was the color scheme of the museum in the past, was this kind of yellow, and it's actually a brighter yellow than shows up in this picture. And the graphics here, and you can see the trim around the display placards was kind of a lightish yellow as well. That's what we're changing over, just so that you know what things are going to. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing at that point in time. Just bring you up to date on that covers through most of the work that's going on. The exhibits, what our plan right now is that in May, when we reopen, the Human Spaceflight Gallery will open up to the public in its finished state for the first time. In June, we will get the inductee plaques all up. That's the goal right now, onto all of those new walls and the new graphics. And then in August, the satellite gallery will be revising and finishing and reopening up the satellite gallery. It has been closed for a long period of time. And then in December, the new science fiction and science fact gallery on the 3B floor will open at that point in time. So it's kind of an aggressive goal. The one that I think might push back a little bit would be the December sci-fi and sci-fact gallery. That could push back into the late winter or early spring of 2022. We also, as I mentioned before, got asked by the 49th Wing, and we are working on finalizing that right now. We got asked by them to do an exhibit design for them that tells about the namesake for the base, Holloman, and so we'll be doing that as the spring and summer move along. And those are the big parts of my report. I'm going to talk about long-range strategic plan here in a moment, but I think I'll combine that discussion with the committee discussion when that comes up, if you don't mind with that. And I'll open up for questions, comments, or whatever.
I do have a question. I was just wondering, what all the new graphics that's coming in, has there been any, I guess, thought into representing diversity in some of those?
Yes, there is. And across the board, as we design new exhibits, we really, and part of our problem is space history. We have to take a look at, the representation of different eras. Sometimes diversity-wise is a little difficult, and that's just a historical issue for a lot of museums. But that being said, we are pushing back. We have purchased, say, when you talk about the Human Spaceflight Gallery, we have gone out and actually purchased artifacts, like many of you saw the Hidden Figures movie, where they talked about the human calculators and the contribution of that they have done, people like Katherine Johnson. And so we went out and actually purchased some of the calculators, not the people, but the calculators that they actually used at that point in time to put on display. So as the graphics and the stories are all going up, as much as we can, we are including, taking a look at the, and when you take a look at the underrepresented folks within the space history story, it has been female and minority, very much so. And so we are trying to include as much of that as possible into the displays. But if we're, I think the thing we run into is if we're displaying stuff about the long ago astronomers and dreamers, it's difficult in those storylines to include much diversity. So that's always been our bugaboo. It's much easier when we're talking about human spaceflight and rockets, missiles, and motors and satellites and those sort of stories. It's much easier. So it's always a portion of the discussion for every new display, gallery, graphic, whatever that we put up.
Thank you. I think with the exhibit related to sort of like you said, science facts or trivia, that might be an opportunity to kind of include a little bit more as well to balance the historical 50s Sputnik type of display. But I just thought it was a good opportunity, since you're already designing graphics, to just kind of have that perspective.
Yes.
Okay, well, thanks, Chris. Is there any more discussion or questions for Chris on either his verbal report now or the written report that he sent out earlier?
As always, Chris, thank you so much. We appreciate all your hard work.
Well, the great thing for me is that I do most of my time teleworking still right now. I've got an awesome staff who is overseeing all of this work, not only the work online, because they're still teleworking in the education and curatorial realm, I've got a number of staff who are now on site and overseeing the work that's going on, maintaining the cleanliness, doing all of the painting and graphic installations. They're still maintaining all the COVID safe practices necessary, and it's a very limited number of folks, but they're doing amazing things on site, and they're the ones who truly deserve the praise in this situation.
Absolutely.
Paolo, did you have a question?
I think Paulo was letting everybody know that he and actually 2 of my staff members have got a space grant meeting that they had, and he had to drop offline for the space grant meeting.
Very well. Okay, any other questions for Chris? Okay. I believe there's a discussion now of the committee reports. And Chris, you're going to lead us through that as well.
Right. So here's what I've got. First one, and the one that I had the most interest in, long range plan, or the mission and the long range strategic plan group. I had a number of volunteers for that one, and Beth O'Leary, Paolo, and Chris Churchill all volunteered for that committee. And I think, if I would like to recommend that we constitute a committee, that is composed of those 3 individuals. I think I'd also like to recommend, and I don't think he volunteered for it, but I'd kind of like to volunteer him if he's willing. I'd like to add Don Elder to that as well, based on his experience with the museum over a number of years as well, so that there's one, between he and Jackie, that one of the 2 of them would be on that committee as well, for us to get going on work. And so those would be the proposed individuals for the long range strategic planning committee.
Honored to be asked to serve, Chris.
Thanks, Don. It's a wise choice having that kind of representation. Beth, you have a comment?
Yeah, Paolo had to leave for that meeting, and he wanted me to ask Kimberly Fahey if she would consider being also on that meeting. I'd like another woman.
I'd be honored to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kimberly. Anyone else have any interest in participating in the long-term planning committee? Okay, Carlos.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that.
And Chair and members of the commission, I just wanted to make sure how many members are participating, just when we wrap this up, to go over that, because we cannot have a quorum.
Correct. What is the maximum number of members on any commission to avoid a quorum?
There are 11 members of the commission, so you cannot have more than 5. 6 would constitute a quorum.
Where are we at then with long-range strategic planning? We have Beth, Chris, Paolo, Kimberly.
That would create a problem, because we would have Beth, Chris, Paulo, Don, Kim, and Carlos. That would be 6 members.
That is 6. So
I could sit off of that.
I'm sorry.
And
I didn't catch who that was. Carlos?
And I could also suggest, if you need, there could be an alternate. So if maybe one of the members is not available, Carlos could step in as well. It depends how you want to structure these types of things. And yeah, those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you for that advice, Valerie. I have no, is there anyone who has any objections to that? And Carlos, would you be willing to serve as an alternate if one of the committee members was unavailable?
Yes.
Okay, so that gives us our membership to the Long Range and Strategic Planning Committee. Valerie, is that an assignment that we need to vote on?
It can be appointed by the chair. That is fine. The way you did it is fine.
Okay. Well, then I would ask if there are any objections to that membership that we just enumerated being appointed to the Long Range Strategic Planning Committee. Okay, hearing no objections, and so appointed. We also have a development committee to discuss.
Yes. Now here's where it's not that I'm going to say they went off the rails, but I got no response of volunteers from anybody for the development committee or for the legislative support committee. Just as a reminder, the purpose of those two committees, the development committee kind of served two purposes. One was for development of new members to the commission, which the commission is completely full right now. So that element of it is not significant. The other portion of it, development, was when we are taking a look at working with the foundation on fundraising as well, that side of development. And the push for that is going to be coming down the pipe. So right now, not a significant push, but a year to 2 years is when things are going to get more significant for work with that committee. So that's what the development committee is. And then the legislative support committee is groups to be talking with the legislature, to be working with the foundation when we set up the legislative receptions, for monitoring and paying attention to legislative issues related to the Department of Cultural Affairs and to the museum. So that's what the legislative support committee does. And I didn't have volunteers for either of those. So I think, Mr. Chair, I'm going to look at you and see if you want to look for volunteers at this meeting or try and do it after the meeting, or just, how you would like to proceed.
So I think my comments at the time, and I would entertain any discussion on this for the rest of the commission, is obviously there are some vacancies to be filled on these committees. It doesn't sound as though the need is an urgent one, but we don't want to let that go too long. So if there is not a reason we need to identify people who are interested in that committee, I would urge all of us to consider serving on those committees and see what we can do about getting some volunteers to step forward by the next committee meeting. Figure out how we can do that. Perhaps, Chris, you can lobby some of us appropriately.
I might do some of that as long as there's reception, and I'm willing to talk with anybody about, quote unquote, how much time it takes to be on any of these committees. So because traditionally it has not been a significant amount. And like the Long Range Strategic Planning Committee, there's going to be a lot more over the next 12 months because we are going to be getting going on a new long range strategic plan that originally we wanted to try and have ready to go by the end of this year, but because of all of the issues that we've run into in the last 2 to 3 months with the renovation, we're going to push that back towards the beginning of 2022.
Chris, can there be dual roles? Could we serve on 2 committees?
Yeah, there's nothing preventing that.
In that case, I'd be happy to volunteer for the development committee. Or direct that to John. I'm sorry, John, I'd be happy to.
Don, I would be more than happy to have you on the development committee, and hopefully we can attract some other folks to be interested in helping you out. And any other, Beth?
I have a question for Valerie. When I served on the CPRC, we had a number of what we call subcommittees, which I think this is what they are. They can also meet in a public meeting, say an hour before this meeting, and have a meeting and constitute a quorum or not, as long as the discussion is open to the public, so that we could be meeting as a group at a time on the agenda that's posted to discuss these issues.
I think that was a question for Valerie.
Yeah,
Whether
Valerie.
logistically doable.
Right, I'm just trying to look at the standing rules also as trying to understand this. Yes, I mean, it is possible to have a quorum of the board and meet in a public setting, open, if you want to do that. You know, it's more work on the staff to prepare that, to make sure you have your agenda, that you notice it just like a public meeting. So it can be before a public meeting, but if you do want to meet more often, you can of course do that outside of a public meeting, but outside of a regular meeting, but you would still be subject to all of the notice requirements with respect to the agenda and all of those items.
Right, but only if we were a quorum.
Right. If you're not a quorum, you can meet every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks. You call everyone up, say, can we have a conversation tomorrow? You can do that. You don't need a formal agenda. You don't need to provide notice. You don't have to put it on all of the websites and posting reports.
Sounds like that's a possibility, but probably best avoided unless there's a compelling reason to do so because of the logistics involved. That's how I interpret that. Rhonda, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I would be willing to serve on the development committee as well.
Thank you. Okay. James?
Hi, John. Hi, Chris. I thought I had actually volunteered for the Legislative Support Committee, but in searching my email, it turns out that email didn't get sent. So I had intended to send that email. So please count this as that email. And apologies for my email system not working.
It sounds as though, James, you are now the Legislative Support Committee. We can round up some help.
So this is Bryce. I was throwing it out there. So I live in Santa Fe. So being on the Legislative Support Committee might be advantageous, although I really don't know what it entails. So if it's, you know, around the legislator, then logistically it might be good for me to be there.
Yep. It's a lot of that.
Sounds like
okay.
There's some interest in developing, and this is good. Any other folks? Oh, Carlos?
I'll volunteer for the development committee.
Okay. This is going better than I thought. Okay. So we have from the Legislative Support Committee, currently we've got Rhonda, James, Bryce. Is that correct?
Did you
I'm
say
sorry,
Rhonda?
Rhonda, we're on development.
Development, yeah.
I'm trying to read my own notes at this point.
Right, and Bryce for legislative.
Yes. Okay. So 2 on the Legislative Committee at this time, and we'll look for possibly some more. And on the Development Committee, we have Carlos and Rhonda and Don. Is that correct? Very well.
Yes.
Okay. And then on the, again, recapping the Long Range Strategic Planning Committee, Beth, Chris, Don, Paulo, Kimberly, and Carlos is an alternate. Okay.
And I think you can say, Chair, that you are making those appointments as you previously stated, just so the record is clear.
Yes, let the record show that the people just mentioned are appointed to those committees. And I will just ask if Sharon, if you're taking minutes on that, did you get all of that? Or do you have any questions, or would we need to re-go through that list? And I suppose the meeting is being recorded, so.
Yeah, I have it all. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Sharon. Okay, so we have a discussion of committees. Is there any more to discuss with respect to committees, membership, appointments, or duties? Johnny, you have a question for us?
Yeah, actually, it's just a comment. Since those last two committees also involve possible foundation involvement, I just want to assure everybody that we're here to support those meetings. So if you're having those meetings and you think we can be of assistance in any of those, we're more than happy to participate.
I appreciate that, and please continue to remind us of any support that we can get. I think for a lot of us who are new on the commission, and anybody who feels they need to repeat a suggestion, it would be welcome. So thank you. Okay, I think that ends this, item number 10 on our agenda. Typically, we would discuss any new business at this point, and I believe at the beginning of the meeting, Beth O'Leary brought up a change to the agenda to bring up something with respect to new business.
I'm not qualified to speak for Paulo Ermeg, but when he had to leave, he has reached out to the museum, and Chris, you may know more about it than I do, but as the head of the New Mexico Space Grant Consortium, he's working with NASA educators on creating workshops on coding and robotics. And I have to applaud him for having these kinds of partnerships, because it seems that if the goal of the museum is to do a lot of outreach and to interact with other agencies and entities, that this meeting, which happens to be, 15 minutes ago, started 15 minutes ago, is really important. And I have to say that adding Paulo to this commission is really helpful, both to his facility at NMSU and also to the Museum of Space History. And he'll have more on that, I think, at the next meeting. A couple of issues I wanted to bring up under new business was the timeliness of how we're receiving a couple of things: the actual agenda, the minutes, and the Zoom invites. I would prefer to have all these things bundled, at least 2 weeks before the meeting, or 10 days as the legal requirement is. And that one person is in charge of sending out the Zoom invitations. Chris Churchill and I were talking about this earlier. Chris, can you talk a little bit about how this could be done for the Zoom meeting so that it's a little bit smoother?
Well, yeah, I was just giving Beth an example of some other committees I'm on, and this tends to work, I think, for people who use iCal, or for example, on Mac. And I'm not sure everybody's a Mac user. It probably can be generalized, but one of the things that's always worked is an email that's sent out, which contains some kind of calendar invitation that could be networked into, say, your Outlook or networked into your iCal. And it includes all of the information, including timely reminders. When you click on it, it instantly informs the sender who has agreed to RSVP to the meeting or has declined the invitation. So all that information is contained within that. And then you get your pop-up reminders the day before, the morning of, and then in the iCal invite, you just go to there and it has the Zoom link, and it's all self-contained in one shot. And it seems like it's a pretty convenient way for communicating that. That's all I was sharing with Beth.
And let me just make a few comments. So the when you talk about the 10 days, traditionally that was for the announcement of the meeting, which did go out, quote unquote, but the agenda isn't required until 3 days before the meeting. And just traditionally, we'd only been sending it out the week before in the past, and we're open to whatever the commission wants. We can do just about anything. Now on and Warren may have to provide more information on how this is working, but with the Zoom webinar, each of those invitations has to go out individually through Zoom. I don't know, and Warren, if you could answer on this one, whether or not it could go through. And I know iCal's got a thing, Outlook, you know, you can invite people to a meeting with the same thing with the reminders, etc. But it's a general thing that goes out to everybody. It's not individualized with the individual links that they would need for the meeting, doing it as this webinar as we do now. Warren, is that possible?
Yeah, so I can send out a calendar invite as well, that will show everybody invited to the calendar, and you can see who's approved and who's RSVP'd. But the webinars do have an individual link that you'll have to watch for as well. Now I do have those going out. I can have those going out 10 days before, the day before, and hour before is what I currently have that set as. So you will get a reminder email. And I'll do what I kind of did this morning is I'll send out another reminder email reminding people to check their junk folder and stuff. But we can send a calendar invite as well, if that will help people to put it into their calendar and keep track of things.
If we do that, I'd rather have that go out from Sharon, because Sharon's the one who keeps track of who's attending.
That's fine. I'm just saying that's the only problem with the webinar is that you do have to get an individual link. So the program doesn't give you an ability. Like in meetings, you can send a meeting invite from Zoom and it'll put it in your calendar automatically. Webinars is an individual link and it doesn't have that feature.
Yeah, I understand we're adjusting to some of the complex logistics of having to have meetings like this using a format like Zoom. And with any luck, this will be the last time we have to do this, but I don't want to say that too loudly because I imagine it's going to happen again. But I certainly appreciate Chris's and Beth's comments on that, and we try a couple of things to tweak the logistics of holding the meetings. And by about the time we get that right, we'll be hopefully doing this face to face. My only comment is I do appreciate the comments about both the minutes and the agenda, and maybe streamlining that a little bit would be helpful, especially getting the draft minutes out earlier so that we have a chance to review those and with a deadline for everyone to resubmit any corrections, so that there's no confusion or no extra work with the staff.
Mhm.
And of course, if we can receive an agenda ahead of time, that would be helpful too, especially if there are going to be any additions to the agenda where they can get that corrected or updated and then published to the public at the same time as everybody else gets it. So, and if any folks on the staff need any help with that, I'll be willing to help out with that and as necessary. So we can reach out to me.
Yeah, I hope people don't take this as a criticism, because I know that we're a lot of us are brand new. A lot of us are, trying to do the best we can. And I just guess that some kind of consistency is really useful. Instead of, hunting around, well, whose Zoom invite do I take? And, having multiple things come in all the time. If they're bundled, then we know we're going to get them. And we have, as Chris said, a calendar and a notification system. I don't think there's any problem. Thank you.
And any other discussion on the point of meeting logistics? Okay. All right, I think we're down to the last two items on the agenda. Item number 11 is confirmation or establishment of upcoming meeting dates. And I think if I just look out on the calendar to the next quarter, that takes us somewhere around the 11th or 18th of June, I believe. And
here's where we may need to take a look, because there was special meetings called in December, which isn't a normal meeting time, and then it was going to be at the end of February, but then we were trying to reopen. It ended up here on March 12th, as we were trying to outthink the system, and it beat us. In any case, though, our next normal meeting time will be the last Friday at 1 o'clock in April, and then July and October, and then January. That's the normal meeting times. And so, to be brutally honest, I'd actually recommend that we try to get back onto that, either by meeting it on April 30th so that then that sets us up to go to July 30th, or you could vote now and just say we'll meet again on July 30th, so.
Any opinions or discussion on having a meeting? I think that under many circumstances, if we were meeting face to face, I would probably say, let's kick it out to the July meeting. Although I think we're going to be in a frame of time when two things are going to be changing very rapidly, perhaps a month from now. One is there's going to be a lot more, hopefully a lot more progress on beating this pandemic. And the second thing is Chris is going to have a much better handle on what's going on with the museum and the reopening and the reconstruction. So my suggestion to the commission is that we get back on the regular schedule by having that April meeting and seeing where all of this stuff that's in flux is right now. Perhaps we can make that a shorter meeting and then get back on schedule that way.
Can I ask if we're meeting in a month for a shorter time frame, that maybe that's a good opportunity for the committees to at least discuss what needs to be discussed as well?
I think that's an excellent suggestion, Kimberly, and to devote some time to some assignments for the various committees.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I agree with what Kimberly's saying, and I think it'll be helpful as we have momentum, and now we have these committees, we can have meetings in between and provide items for the agenda for the April 30th meeting.
That's a good suggestion. Any more comments or suggestions about holding the meeting at the last Friday of April?
I'll move we meet on April 30th.
I will second that motion.
Can I add that you might as well set the next two meetings after that as well, all at this time? So that would be July 30th and October 29th.
July 30th, October 29th, and April, what is the Friday in April?
30th.
30th. At this point, I personally have no objection to that. Is there any discussion or objection to those dates before we add those to the motion and vote on them?
That's a good friendly amendment.
I don't think I'm allowed to make an amendment.
I will second that. Let's see if I can go around and get everybody's name correctly this time. And I'm going to start with Rhonda. I'm sorry, Chris has a discussion point.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was busy writing something down, and I was wondering if you could just repeat those dates for me again, so I make sure that I know what I'm agreeing to.
That's April 30th.
Yeah.
July 30th and October 29th. Is that correct, Chris?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I'm just checking my account. Thanks.
Okay. Back to the motion to approve those meeting dates. Rhonda?
Aye.
Bryce? Is he still with us?
I think he dropped out.
He dropped
Bryce
off.
had to step out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Carlos?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
James?
James McAteer, aye.
Kimberly?
Aye.
And I believe we've also lost Paolo. And we don't have Jacqueline. And Beth?
Aye.
And I vote aye. I think I got everybody who's still here. That's correct. Third time's a charm. Okay. So we have our meeting dates for the next three meetings. And then the last item on the agenda is adjournment.
I move we adjourn.
Oops.
I will second that, and I will Valerie, I don't know that we need a roll call vote on adjournment, or do we need that?
Take that as a no.
That is a no. So any, are there any objections to adjourning today's meeting?
No.
Today's meeting is adjourned at 14:59. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Hey, John, House, may I ask one quick question?
Yes, you may.
I'm just curious, if the meetings are face-to-face,